The next session we're going to be talking about is all about drones. So we've already heard there's quite a lot of crossover between precision agriculture and drones. Precision agriculture just being one of the use cases for drone. I'm from ARPAS-UK, who are the Drone Trade Association in the UK, and we have a predominantly made up of operators, so people who want to go out there and actually collect data. People are using it for a wide range of things, but as we've seen, precision agriculture being one of them. 5G is going to offer us an enormous advantage with regards to drone technology. Some of the weaknesses at the moment is the range in which drones can travel, being able to connect people maybe in the office with people out in the field. And so we sort of see 5G as one of those enabling technologies. And we've got Williams-Wynn, who's Managing Director of Blue Bear Systems, who's going to be talking a little bit about some of the applications they've been using it for.
So I'm talking about drones. A drone, think of a drone as a camera on a big stick. You want to capture some data. You know, the old way you would capture, you know, as a kid, I remember getting a camera and sticking it, duct taping it to a stick, holding it up in the air and looking over a wall and things, you know, and doing things that kids do. A drone is really kind of an extension of that. And why do I'm not belittling drones now. I'm trying to. We make drones. We've made drones for 20 years, but it's not about the drone. Everyone gets hung up on how interesting the drone is, how sexy the drone is, and one of the audience just mentions it is all about the data. It is about what you collect. The reason you're putting a drone in the sky is to collect data or to have an effect, and that effect might be a camera collecting something. That effect might be shepherding sheep. And I use that term because Daniel and I met on a project called Cyber Shepherd, which was about 9 years ago, and it was here in Alston, and we were looking at how drones could be used to look at sheep. So that's where we started with this. And something that stuck in my mind, we went to a farm, and the very first question the farmer asked me about the drone was not, how long does it fly? How good is it? What can do it? Can I fly to the local market and see how busy it is? And I said, well, yeah, you could do. And I said, why? And he said, well, I want to know if it's worth me going to market with my cattle today. And I was like, okay, good, interesting use of a drone. That was 9 years ago. Here we are now, still looking at sheep. So I wanted to took our project. How many of you do dull, dirty and boring things? You know, taking the garbage out, cleaning the oven, I don't know, boring things. Well, we talked earlier about, or how many of you have assistants to do that? So my two able assistants are in the audience here. We talked about driving a tractor. Stephen talked about the fact that tractors now drive themselves. You know, driving a tractor for 9 hours a day. I grew up on a farm. You know, as soon as I was able to reach the pedals on a tractor, you know, I was put to work. You know, they didn't have any chimneys in my farm, so I couldn't clean those. But they are dull, dirty, boring jobs. We talked about dangerous jobs. You know, farming is dangerous. If you can use automation and autonomy to be able to aid the farm workers in that, they can be more productive in other areas. We've heard these arguments before. So I wanted to just touch on those points and raise those. So I think they're really important. What we're doing here is not about the drone themselves, it is about the data. However, as James just alluded to, there are a number of challenging issues that we face as drone operators and drone suppliers when we come into rural areas. Not least is flying the drones with data connectivity. The second thing is we're gathering lots of data. I keep using the word data. You need to process that data. Currently, a team might turn up in a van and they fly over a farm and they gather lots of data, and then they go to the next farm and they gather lots of data, and then they might do a third farm. They take it away and they process the data and they give that data to a farmer a week later. Well, that's great, but the farmer might have needed that data today to be able to apply pesticide to stop invasive pests coming across his land, or it might be really, really dry and he needed to know where to water. So time criticality of that data is really important. So in the project itself, we were really looking at how does 5G bring benefits when you start operating drones, but any automation, any type of new technology. How do you connect that rural community to enable better data capture, better data exploitation? So we started off looking at things like the sensors we needed. We started at, multispectral is fairly well known, fairly well proven within the agri-tech industry. And really, how do we get to this remote operation? And we looked at a number of use cases. We started off with a very broad range, everything from power line inspection to tourism to the agri-tech cases you see there. But we focused in on those two because that fitted nicely with our partners at Precision Decision and obviously what we'd done before with Daniel. So what did we achieve in the project? So actually we got some really, really good data connectivity. Greater than 100 megabits of download speed and greater than 40 megabits upload speed. Now, why is that important? Something like a 26 hectare field generates 15 gigabytes of data in a multispectral capture. That's a lot of data to try and get back to anywhere, let alone to the farm, and then process that data. So actually having 5G connected in the field, we were able to get the data back out, processed, and back to the farm, within an hour. We also enabled remote connection to the UAVs. We had an operator sitting in Kingston University in London and the drone flying in Alston in Cumbria and in York on Precision Decisions farm, 250 miles away, being operated. We had a safety pilot in visual line of sight to satisfy CAA regulations, but we're able to demonstrate control of a drone over hundreds of miles. Now why is that important? One drone, one operator. What if you are a service company operating 100 drones? All of a sudden now you can be in your central headquarters with control or at least monitoring of what's happening with all of your fleet of drones. No different to Eddie Stobart and his fleet of trucks. It's all about that data, what's being collected, where is it efficient, driving efficiencies across their business as they help drive efficiencies across the farming business. So this is not, again, keep coming back, it's not just about drones. It's about efficiency, it's about improving business. And a drone is just one part of that technology. We're able to get these results back, say, within 1 hour. That's probably a world record. We'd like to think it is. Certainly the 5G control of a drone from 200 miles away, that's a world first. We've done a lot of UK and world first on this project. And being able to survey large areas. Currently, if you're operating under a standard CA permission, under visual line of sight, you can't go more than 500 metres. That's not a lot of farmland. As we're pushing and working with the CAA to be able to enable more what we call BVLOS, beyond visual line of sight operations, all of a sudden you can survey an entire farm rather than just one field at a time. That's, again, efficiencies, speed, etc. So what did we actually learn on this? Well, one of the things we learned, and alluded to earlier by Steve Davison, when we set out on this, we didn't know what the best technology was to use. And actually, we started off with TV whitespace. Turned out to be a bit of pants, really, for what we were doing. So we binned that, and we moved on to some Cambium technology, which turned out to be really good. But it's all about creating a testbed and learning here. And DCMS, the funding they've given us, has enabled us to experiment and learn and inform the market, not just ourselves, as to where we go with this. We learn actually how hard it is to deploy 5G technology. I think Steve, you'll allude to that. It's not just a matter of putting a mast up and turning it on. James's map, I have to say, is slightly incorrect. James, you missed off Bedfordshire. We were the first people to put a 5G network into Bedfordshire, courtesy of Steve and Quicklime. So, that brought an awful lot of interest from the mayor, and there's a lot of ongoing interest of how can we enable the whole of Bedfordshire with 5G. We've had a call recently of how can we enable the whole of Northumbria with 5G and for rural communities, farming, medicine delivery, etc. So the lessons that we've learned are now being asked for by a number of other teams who want to build on what we've done in this consortium. So I think as a consortium, and these are just a few of the benefits here, what do we think about actually, way forwards on this, I think, and where we've come from, the lessons learned? We need to capture a lot more data. Hamid has said, for example, she needs a lot more training data. This is just the start. We're 18 months into something that is achieved a number of world firsts, has further enhanced all of our businesses, and has created a lot of valuable information for the industry in general. So, and when we talk about bringing it back now to Stephen's sort of the social aspects of this, how do we bring all of this technology around to benefit the rural communities in every way, not just about a drone. You know, we can tell the farmer whether he can go to market, but actually we can help him deliver medicines. We can go and do search and rescue. You know, the technology will enable lots and lots of spin-off benefits for those rural communities.
So I know Blue Bear are doing some fantastic work out there, and I believe you didn't actually mention they've got their experimental BVLOS drone corridor, which they're also working with. ARPAS actually work quite closely with Blue Bear in the Drone Industry Action Group, which is a group of large stakeholders trying to sort of push drone technology forward. Our next guest is Craig Patrick, who's from Precision Decisions, and he's going to be talking about some of the stuff that they're going to be doing.
And good afternoon, everyone. Like I say, you can see on the board, my name is Craig Patrick from Precision Decisions. I have the pleasure of working with Stephen on a daily basis, and over the course of this project, it really has unravelled a lot of things that we didn't think would come from it when we started. You can see my job title on the board there. I just want to bring to attention the word support. Out of all those words you see there, support is the one thing that probably consumes most of my day-to-day work at Precision Decisions. My main role is to support farmers in embracing precision technology and getting the best out of it, because if they're not getting what they should be getting out of it, what's the point? So we're getting sick of seeing a picture of this field today, but it formed a central part of this particular part of the test bed. And I feel most at home with images that you see here on the screen, looking at really vast data sets that are especially quite important to what a farmer may be trying to achieve, or at least trying to understand some problems that he may have on farm. A typical image like the one that you see on the left is highlighting to a farmer exactly where he's getting different bits of performance out of his field. And it's identifying areas also which are probably costing him money to actually keep in production if he doesn't do something about it. So by the work we do at Precision Decisions, by embracing precision technology, managing data sets which are coming at us thick and fast this day and age, the aim is to try and get the farmer to digest this information and do something about what he's seeing to get a better end result. And a very crude representation of that is the image you see on the right. So just to explain, in this image, we're looking to try and improve yield within the field. That is a yield map on the left-hand side. That big red corner is actually an area of the field which is consistently 30% underperforming from the rest of the entire field. And that can mean quite a lot, depending on what crops the farmer's growing, and it could ultimately be a bit of a margin breaker for him. So in order to combat that, we would use typical precision farming techniques. In this particular existence, we've got an example of variable rate seed. So through the various data sets we had on this farm, as well as including the farmer knowledge, we were able to identify one of the main limiting factors in this field was to do with soil type in that bottom corner. Very heavy soil, really tough to establish, especially in a wet year. Slugs love to eat all the seed that's in there. So by the time the crop was emerging, the slugs had eaten everything and there wasn't much left to grow for the rest of the season. So in order to combat that, we decided to improve seed rate. So use more seed in that particular area of the field to get better establishment. So if the slugs still have a go, there'll still be a lot of crop left ready for us to harvest come the end of the year. And this particular field is actually the centre of the story and the life of the field that Stephen was referring to before. So throughout this whole project and before, I've been looking at this field, embracing precision technology, seeing how we can improve the performance and ultimately get the best result out of what land the farmer has. Now, this whole part of this afternoon's session is about drones, and as part of this, even though that's not an image of some drone data, I flew this field myself with a drone on multiple occasions, and I just want to tell you a little bit of a story about what it takes to go and fly this field. That field is situated about a 5-minute drive away from my office. I physically have to get in a car, drive to that field, unload my drone and take off. It takes about 7 minutes altogether to fly that field. However, that field is situated very near RAF Linton-on-Ouse, so 24 hours beforehand I have to do an enormous amount of paperwork that I really don't want to do, to send through to their air traffic control just to tell them where I'm going to be on that day, how high I'm flying, and even though I'm under 120 metres, I still need to tell them. All for me to go through that, do all my other various bits of paperwork, for me to arrive at the field the next day for it to be raining. I can no longer fly. I've got a very angry farmer who wants his data thick and fast, and ultimately the constraints in doing so, it's just not practical. So from a service provider point of view, it's very difficult to provide a compelling drone surveying service because of unnecessary issues like that, but also overheads as well. I'm sure Blue Bear will support me on this. The overheads it costs to put a man in a van up and down the country, labour, it makes it really impractical, and that of course gets reflected on the service price, and the farmer isn't really going to pay what it actually costs to get that sort of data, especially when it ends up being a repeat service that has to occur for him to get the benefit out of the end product. It could be worse, however. I could be David or Johnny and work for Blue Bear Systems, who have to travel 3 hours every time they want to come and fly this field. And not only that, once they get there, they have to try and find me to get the key for the field, and I'm usually not there. So again, it's just added more delay and inconvenience for actually getting a drone up in the air over that field and collecting the data. And a little funny story from David, who isn't actually here, but one of the other issues, because this field is more than 500 metres in length, when the drone moves towards the far end, you have to move with it, so you're within your zone. So you end up walking up and down the field a bit. David from Blue Bear was doing this and nearly did himself a serious injury and fell down a rabbit hole as he was watching his drone, keeping his eyes on it at all times. So again, just more impracticalities associated with it. So the whole idea of chasing beyond VLOS, beyond visual line of sight, it would be a much more efficient, from my point of view, if I could have a drone in a box on a farm. I could be sat in my office and fly it from there and get the same result. I don't have the overheads of having to travel to a farm and physically do it there and then in the field. An even better situation would be for, at the same time every day, the drone pops out, flies itself, comes back, recharges and unloads all its data without anyone having to interact with it. That's going to be more efficient for the farmer, because at the end of the day, the drone's a means to the end. It's the data we want. So just to add on some of the things that we've been looking at in the 5G projects, not only to do with drones, but it ties in very nicely with some things we're doing, particularly around autonomous vehicles and the hands-free farm, which some of you may have heard of before. For those who don't know, I won't dwell too long on it, but when you get home this evening, give it a good YouTube search, because it really is fascinating. Three guys managed to take an area of land and farm it autonomously without a human stepping foot in that field. So that's cultivating a field, drilling it, spraying it, harvesting it. Full farming process without anyone actually stepping foot in the field. That was 3 years ago, and the progression of that sort of project has been fantastic. It's now been upscaled to an entire farm, which is going to take another 3 years. And just to put it in perspective, I think before all this kicked off, someone at John Deere was consulted, and he laughed and said we would need 20 million to think of trying to do that. These three guys did it on £250,000, more or less. So it's quite a testament to what these sorts of project test beds can actually lead to. Why is this important to 5G? Well, we're upscaling it to a whole farm. So as you can see there, we've got a tiny little tractor and a tiny little combine. That's going to struggle to cover an entire farm by itself. So the idea is we need more vehicles, and all those vehicles will need to talk to each other. The combine will need to know where the tractors are. The gates will need to open on the fields when the tractor gets there. There's a lot of crossover here with what studies are going on with autonomous vehicles and Google self-driving cars and all of this. It's a fascinating area to be in, and 5G can now have a big impact on how that connectivity is occurring. We made the point earlier that 5G is often thought of as sending large bits of data half the way across the country. It could be as simple as just communicating better between the field and the farmer sat in the farmhouse. So if all these tractors can work on a network together and start getting the productivity, autonomous farming really is a reality, and it's going to help us out in the long term. As Stephen highlighted, we have an ageing average farmer, and the succession just isn't there. Will this make farming more appealing to younger generations? Who knows, but it's certainly going to up the skill sets of the workers as well. So it's potentially going to appeal to a bigger audience. So without going on any longer, I'll leave it there.